I asked my wife, honey, what do you want for Valentine's Day? And she said to me, quote, I just want Mario Cristobal to hire an offensive coordinator.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Valentine's Day. I'm your host, Alex Donno. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. And thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We are available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So as the Miami Hurricanes offensive coordinator search continues, plenty to talk about, always plenty to talk about with the Canes. Let's bring on very good friend of the show, the man, the myth, the legend, South Florida high school sports guru, Larry Blustein. Blue, good morning to you. How are you, sir?
You too. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Broke out the nice U shirt today, a little long sleeve, a little cool nip in the air.
It is cool.
For us in South Florida, 65 is cold.
It is. I mean, you step outside, the air is a little nippy and chilly, and it's a beautiful, beautiful day out there. So, Blue, you and I, we've spoken the last couple times you've been on this show. We've talked about just how hard it is to recruit offensive players and transfer portal players when you don't have an offensive coaching staff. And obviously an area that Miami missed on some targets, before signing day and thus far in the transfer portal has been wide receiver. Do you think once Miami has that coaching staff settled, you've got, an offensive coordinator and a wide receivers coach, do you think then they're going to start hitting that portal really hard? Because a guy like Gary Bryant, who Miami's still in play for, is still out there.
Well, when we take a look at like a Gary Bryant and players like that, I mean, right now it's kind of relative because you need to have somebody in place that could pull the strings and somebody, because right now you don't have, we don't have a clue who's coming in. So you don't have, because you got to remember, it's so late in the game now with spring football 2.5 weeks away. You're in a situation where whoever they hire, I mean, they've got to burn midnight oil every single night because look at all the catching up. You just can't come in the system without knowing your roster. So even though somebody's, wherever they may be right now, they're not studying Miami's roster because of the fact that they are not sure if they're going to take the job. So that's the most important part, to understand what you have, what you don't. So with that in mind, you've got to get in a situation where you're going to have to watch film. You have to spend plenty of time with the coaches and Mario and Mirabal and everybody, and they're going to bring you up to speed as much as they can because you don't want to go out and hire new coaches right now because your priority, because that's a relative thing. I mean, you could always bring in a coach in a couple of weeks or next week or whatever, but you've got to evaluate what you have, because you have to understand what you need to go after. And then you bring on some coaches, because obviously, I mean, they'll keep Kevin Smith and obviously Mirabal. But, I mean, receiver-wise, they're looking. Unless you bring in a quarterback-oriented coach, you're going to have to bring a quarterback coach in. So there's a lot of questions to see who the choice is for the offensive coordinator position. And then I agree with you. I mean, you're going to have to address the issues. I mean, and not just at wide receiver. They're deficient at, offensive line right now. They got a lot of young kids coming in. And they're building a fortress, which you need to do. And obviously the first part, quarterback wise, who you have, but that new guy doesn't know who you have. I mean, he knows from just hearing, Tyler Van Dyke and this and that, but it's the first couple of days are going to be spent orientating yourself with the team, your roster, and then you go from there. And then I'm sure just like with Coach Guidry, being added. I mean, he hit the ground running, started to recruit, so he had a week, advance on the new offensive coordinator. So he had a chance to put things into perspective, and still he may add some new coaches. I mean, that's not solidified, but that's not the important part right now. You got to get that offensive coordinator in. He's got to set what type of offense he's going to run, because that's what you wanted to do during the spring. You didn't want to sit there and just sit there and for like a month and just try to know each other. You had to start winning positions, and you had to start setting the groundwork, as everybody does during the spring, for the summer. And Miami's going to be way behind, unless they hurry up and get somebody in there.
And no doubt about that. And, through the weekend, there were so many alleged leaks happening and so many names being reported on, and who's interviewing, who's not interviewing. And then, Monday and now into Tuesday, things have gotten very quiet, almost suspiciously quiet, Blue. It almost starts to feel like maybe an announcement could be happening soon. Do you think that's the case? Do you think we're finally going to find something out this week?
Well, I think you're in a situation where they have no choice. I mean, whoever it's going to be.
Are you the next coordinator, Larry Blustein?
Huh?
Are you the next coordinator?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not. I could say something. I don't want to get anybody angry. It couldn't be any worse than last year. So at least I throw the ball around a little bit and I'd use them. But you know what? Here's the thing too. And they had a lot of injuries last year, but everybody has injuries. And that's the difference between Miami being at the level they're now and then the next level. But Mario Cristobal and everybody goes, wow, he's waited a long time. Well, there's a lot of factors that everybody don't know. All these people, from the 24/7s and Gabby and everybody like that, you love to have your ear to the ground. And Mario Cristobal is not telling anybody anything. Believe me. Yeah. Believe me. So it could come out of left field, because everyone is talking about Applewhite and this guy and that guy. And nobody knew Guidry, as we talked last week. Nobody even knew he wasn't on anybody's list. So I think that's what's going to happen either today or tomorrow. Somebody is going to be way out of left field that nobody even knew about is going to be brought in, and then you're going to have to deal with it and see what happens. But Mario doesn't want to hire somebody, as you could see, just to hire them.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I want to talk about the offensive personnel when we come back. Is Miami's wide receiver group, do they have more potential than I give them credit for? I want to get Larry Blustein's take on that, and also the challenges for Tyler Van Dyke, who's going to have to learn a third new offense in 4 years at Miami, not to mention Canes hoops. They win again. 5 straight dubs for the Canes, man. They within a week, they beat North Carolina and Duke. I'm loving my life right now. It really is amazing. So keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. And guys, I'm always loving my life when I start my day with a Built Bar, as I did today with a brownie batter puff. If you're looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and calories, you got to try a Built Bar. We got through the holidays into the new year. Our goal for many of us has been to eat healthier this year. You want to eat healthy, but you don't want to compromise taste. Then I've got just the thing for you. You got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious. You're not going to think that they're good for you. They're perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter, brownie, coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is, yeah, they're healthy, only 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't even need to wait around for a box. For years, we've been telling you about ordering Built Bars at Built.com, which you can still do with our promo code LOCKEDON15 for 15% off. But now you can also get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today or Sam's Club, like our listener Al buys his Built Bars at Sam's Club. Grab a 13-bar box with hit flavors like brownie batter and churro, and you can thank me later because I love me some Built Bars. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. Alex Donno joined by Larry Blustein, South Florida High School Sports, AM 560 Sports, WQAM does an awesome job on the Sixth Ring Canes show as well. So, Blue, Could Miami's wide receiver room heading into next year maybe be a little bit better than I give them credit for, with the right coordination, the right play design, hopefully improved wide receiver coaching? Because, I look through the actual list, like I feel like there's a lot of untapped potential on that roster, like guys who haven't proven it, but maybe can prove it this year. Colbie Young has size and potential. He had a couple really good games last year. Xavier Restrepo, we already know, is really good. Jacolby George, last year he was plagued by injury and suspension problems. Isaiah Horton is young, but he's big and tall. Brashard Smith, we've seen some of what he can do. You've got guys like Ray Joseph and Robby Washington coming in. Who are some of the players, Blue, from that group do you think can really step up and hopefully have a special year this year?
Well, first of all, you mentioned Restrepo. You remember he was out for 5 games last year, and that kind of hurt. And while he was, while he doesn't make all the difference in the world, from a wide receiver standpoint, his presence as a slot will always take, a lot of the heat off the outside guys, and probably make a guy like Caleb Young, because here's a guy who came really out of nowhere, and but he has that experience and he's shown. I just think that, you got to, catching the ball is just so paramount. Miami dropped so many balls last year. But there's also a continuity problem. A lot of these receivers had 3 different quarterbacks throwing to him. There was never that one guy, like the year before when Tyler took over the job, and everybody knew he was going to be the guy and he had that leadership. There was no leadership on offense last year. So, and then all of a sudden you lose every running back. You're down to a walk-on who was getting some playing time. So a lot of factors. You have to run the ball. And then Miami certainly has backs to do that. You have to block up front, and their tight end play. Everything's in place, Alex. It's just that they have to start executing. And, whether it doesn't matter who's your coordinator. You don't make plays, then you just don't, you don't win ball games. But I look for Caleb Young to step up. He showed
Colbie Young, by the way.
Colbie. I'm sorry. Colbie Young. I keep saying Caleb. There is a Caleb somewhere. But Colbie Young, I like him a lot. I felt Redding was a guy that really underachieved because I watched him, smart guy, great hands.
I didn't even mention his name.
I thought he was one of those guys. George was a disappointment. I think he started being a disappointment in the spring game when he dropped like 3 quick balls that could have, kind of set the tempo. I know we're not going to judge on what people do in the spring. It's just like spring training. But at the same time, you want to kind of make plays at all times, especially when you're a team trying to get over the hump a little bit. But the newcomers obviously would be nice. But I think an important part of this, to keep pushing the guys there, is to land a Bryant or to get a guy with experience who could come in and, put a little fire like Rambo did, 2 years ago. He put the fire under everybody because he was a guy who was an established receiver, and he came in and he made plays. And that's definitely what has to happen. I'm confident, but we have to have an offense in place. Are we going to run a little spread? Are we going to run RPO? What are we going to do? Are we going to make this a run-heavy offense, which I know Mario Cristobal would love. Because he's got some big boys up front now and improving guys, and then they got a running game. Come on, they've got 4 backs, and plus a couple of incoming guys.
Well, and I want to talk about the incoming guys, Blue, because you know better than most because you watch all these players coming up through the high school ranks. Miami has 4 stars, Mark Fletcher from American Heritage coming in. They got Chris Johnson from Dillard coming in. Do you think either or both of these guys are ready enough to be contributors year one?
Yeah, but they shouldn't have to be because you look at Miami's running game and you've got Parrish. Hopefully Chaney's back. He was a big time get. The young man last year, the freshman who showed so much promise, got hurt early.
Citizen.
His name escapes
Trevante Citizen.
Yeah, Trevante Citizen. there's three real good backs right there. Three backs that could carry the load where you don't have to use a lot of those young kids. But if they have to, I certainly think that Mark Fletcher's ready for it. And certainly with Chris Johnson's speed, he's always going to be in the mix. He's going to be one of those guys that you get in space, maybe not line from scrimmage runner right away. But he, to me, reminds me right off the bat of more of a Lamar Miller, a guy that you could get into space and he could use his speed and use his athleticism, because I think you've got your line from scrimmage running back. If they could stay healthy, Parrish is really, really good. And certainly Parrish, I keep saying to people, I mean, this is a guy that a couple of years ago I thought was the best back that they had by far. I mean, he was big, he's strong, kid's a 7-foot high jumper, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy, and that's a key. And if he can stay healthy and has a really good year, I mean, he's got a running game. I mean, one of the best in the country if they put it all together.
Let's talk about quarterbacking for next year. You know, Tyler Van Dyke, QB1, is back, but he is going to be learning his third new offense in 4 years, right? His first 2 years at Miami, true freshman, redshirt freshman, were the Rhett Lashley offense. And in Tyler's second year, which is the year he broke out, 2021, looked very comfortable in that offense. Then enter a new offense in 2022, wasn't looking comfortable. Then as soon as he started looking comfortable, he got injured. Now you're going to have his third offensive coordinator in 4 seasons coming in. How big of a challenge is that, Blue? Because obviously, and I'm not trying to compare the two quarterbacks, but you know, I remember going to school with Kyle Wright 20 years ago, and he had to deal with, I think, 3 or 4 OCs in 4 years and just never really got off the runway.
Kyle Wright had to deal with 4 OCs in 4 years and was on his butt 37 times in 2 years. So I think the comparison between Kyle Wright and TBD is as good as you can get, because 2 really good quarterbacks that cannot get in the flow from an offensive standpoint because their coordinators are not, they're changing. It's going to be, I mean, you have to build whatever coordinator comes in, you have to have that mindset that you got to build this program around Van Dyke. I mean, come on. I mean, the kid has proven 2 years ago that he could do this at a high level, so much so that they thought he would be, if he came out the next year, they one of the top 3-4 quarterbacks, in the nation, which he still can be. It's just that he has to, I guess, gain the confidence back in himself. And it was lost last year because of the injury, because of the on and off games that he's had. A good game against A&M, and then the next week against Middle Tennessee, not so much. Whatever. It's just that there's no continuity and there's no consistency. And I think whoever comes in has to understand. That's why I would love to see a quarterback-oriented offensive coordinator, because then they'll be on the same page and you don't have to have a go through, and, because you want to be right there with him, sort of like Frank Ponce was the offensive quarterback coach, but he wasn't a coordinator. Right. So his relationship with the quarterbacks was great, but there was a little break of communication between the offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach. That's why if you're a quarterback-oriented guy, you come in there and you completely, you're one person. With your quarterback. And I'm not just saying Tyler, but anybody who else, steps up and plays the position. That's why I think it's essential. I mean, it's not vital, but I think it's essential. And that way you have your quarterback, especially because your offensive coordinator is coming in so late in the stage, in the game. Because if he was here 2-3 weeks ago, plenty of time. Orient himself with the quarterbacks and every other position. Then he gets a quarterback coach, and then all 3 of them are on the same page. But right now, it's going to be tough. It's going to be awfully tough. But thank goodness you have a senior, or a guy who could be a senior as far as age-wise and maturity as a quarterback. Because if you had to come in where you had a freshman, you'd be in trouble.
Real trouble. Yeah, and I had a great conversation about this yesterday, Blue, with Malik Rozier. And, he brought up just the importance, and it builds on a lot of the stuff you're saying there, but need to have a great line of communication between the next OC and Tyler Van Dyke. And
No
everything
doubt.
you said, it would be easier if the OC is also the quarterback's coach, because they need to have the type of relationship where, and part of this is on Van Dyke, needs to step up. He needs to be open, honest about what works for him, what he's comfortable executing on
Yeah,
the field, what he's not comfortable about. And the offensive coordinator needs to listen. Like, we don't need someone who's got this my way or the highway attitude. Like, these are my plays. You've got to run them the way I call them. They need to have a great line of communication, Tyler and the next OC, with
I
what
agree.
he's comfortable running. And they need to build the playbook based on his strengths, not his weaknesses.
That non-continuity adds up to 5 wins every year, and that's it.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, like you said, you have to have one of those things where the quarterback in between classes goes and hangs out with the OC and, has a soda with them and just, kicks things around and maybe watches some film. And I don't think that was in place last year.
No.
And that's what I'm saying. And your offensive coordinator has to be so approachable that he hangs out. He's one of the guys, obviously he's an authoritative figure, but at the same time, you're sitting there on campus, says, I got an hour to kill. I'm going to go over and see coach, and we're going to hang out and watch some film. That's, grab a sandwich, whatever it is, you got to have that. Bryce Young had that. You look at all the great quarterbacks and definitely Stetson Bennett had that, and that's what needs to be in place in Miami. Not that I'm afraid to go see coach. I don't want to go in because we're not on the same wavelength and he's higher above. And I don't want that. And I understand that Mario and them, they want, coaches have to be authoritative and they've got to be, what I say kind of, things are not up for discussion. But if you get in a relationship as a quarterback with an offensive coordinator who trust one another, ideas flow all the time. And the quarterback will say, hey, coach, what if we tried this next week? Because you can see this is open. I don't think that's been there. I don't think that's been there in a long time.
Nope, I completely agree with you. It seems like the communication's pretty good with Coach L and his players on the Hoops team. We got to talk about their latest victory, beating North Carolina, when we come back right here on Locked On Canes. Folks, I hope you guys have been taking advantage of the newest sports betting partner. We're so happy to have FanDuel on the team with us here now on Locked On. The midway point of the NBA season is here. Now's the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. You can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers and threes drained. Guys, I love this so much, especially when my Miami Heat are playing. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So do not miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Make sure for your second listen, you check out Locked On College Basketball. Andy Patton and Isaac Shade take you around the college hoops landscape in 30 minutes or less. And I made a cameo on today's episode. I was on Locked On College Basketball bragging about Canes hoops beating North Carolina, and I was on with Isaac Shade, who he also hosts Locked On Tar Heels. So I got to rub his nose in it a little bit. Blue, 5 straight wins now for Jim Laranaga's team, and I feel especially good about these last 2 road wins, right? Because we know they're a great home team. They're 14-0 at Watsco Center, but to get that win at Chapel Hill last night, gigantic. The victory the previous Saturday at Clemson was a really big road win as well. And Blue, couple things I love about this basketball team, and they beat North Carolina 80-72 last night. I love the fact that if someone like Isaiah Wong is not having his best game, or if Norchad Omier is in foul trouble, barely played in the first half like he was last night, that you've got someone like Jordan Miller who can step up and, look like an all-star out there. And I know Coach L has said, Jordan Miller, maybe the most underrated player in college basketball. He had 24 freaking points last night. Nigel Pack was big last night. I love that. Like, it's truly a team effort, because if some of your most important players aren't at their best, someone else is going to step up on this team.
Usually Seth Greenberg, who used to coach at Miami at one time, usually is not ultra complimentary of the University of Miami. But he said something last night. He says, when you look at Miami, they're capable of beating anybody in the country, anybody in the country at any time. And he said, this is where they line up that is so small comparatively to an Alabama or to a Purdue or to the upper echelon teams. But what happens is they have more athletes than almost anybody in the country on that. And you mentioned, you look at Isaiah Wong or Nigel Pack or any of those guys like that, they're all athletic. And that's the thing. They leap out the building where they may, they're not going to get a lot of points in the paint. They're just not a team like that because they're just not big. That's just the way it is. But you've seen athletic teams like this flourish. And I think what happens, and you pointed out, how hard it is to win in the ACC, let alone win on the road. At a place like Clemson or a place like Chapel Hill. Come on. And people are criticizing them for losing to Pitt, but Pitt's a really good basketball team. Plus, Miami lost by a few points, and that's the thing I'm saying. They're in every single game. There's no blowouts. They're too athletic. Coach L is having more fun now than he's ever had in his coaching career. He's on the same level. Man's in his 70s, and people are looking and say, come on. This guy is, he's got the fountain of youth. He's hip with what the kids are doing these days. They love playing for him. He's a demanding guy, but at the same time, Alex, look what he's done. I don't think there's a story in college basketball like what's happening in Coral Gables.
Yeah, and by the way, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about how they're able to beat these teams despite not having the size, because oftentimes the biggest player in a Miami uniform is a 6'7" Norchad Omier, and this guy's going against 7-footers, no problem. He's out leaping people. Miami's working hard on the boards because they've got the athletes. I think that's so good, and it's not only athleticism, Blue, it's also discipline, because they're always in the right places, and defensively they always keep their man in front of them. So
it's like the Shane Larkins team. This is what this is like. This is a lot like that team, and with more athletes. This is. He's done such a great job of bringing kids in here, and obviously Pack is just. What an addition. A guy, he's small, but at the same time, he's very elusive and he creates. And people are having fun. And when they have home games, this is the first time, and you're a graduate. I don't ever remember it being like this. It's a small place, but at the same time, it kind of sends me back to when I went to college at UNLV. When I was there, they didn't play at the Thomas and Mack Center. They played at the Convention Center, which was 7,100 seats. And that's what this reminds me. Now you can't even get a seat in the place. And remember when Coach L first arrived, that was his big thing. We've got to sell. We got to sell the students. And and you talk about a Miller. Miller's going around the other day on social media, and they're interviewing students. He's interviewing students, for and asking them, what do you think about the team and how do you feel about our win the other night? That never happened before. Miami's been, and you went there, so it's not really a college like that, but now it's turning into be.
Yeah, I remember, I was enrolled at Miami, I think my second year was when the Watsco Center, whatever it was called back then, first opened, and it was obviously awesome to have the on-campus arena, and I went to almost every game. Most games you go to, the crowds weren't that great, except when Duke was in town. When Duke was in town, you'd have to wait in line 4 hours as a student, to make sure you got a seat. But that was the only time, and the building wasn't usually full. But now you're right, Blue. It's it's like, imagine it's like a Miami Heat crowd, except people actually show up on time. But it's like that sort of thing where it's actually looks sold out for most every conference game.
And the thing is the student body, which never really happened, is getting involved to the point where they can't wait. They can't wait for the game, and they plan their whole day about around going to the game. That never happened before.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, listen, awesome times as always with Larry Blustein. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Larry Blustein. Follow our show at Locked On Canes. And we'll talk to you guys again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.